The Pacific has long been a stage for patient strategy and careful signaling. In recent years, Beijing moved with confidence, building islands, deploying missiles, testing new doctrines, and quietly, methodically attempting to redraw the rules of engagement in waters that have been open for generations. Then, in a series of moves that now read like chess played at speed, that balance began to change. On a humid morning last month, a seemingly small tactical deployment set off strategic ripples across the region. Mobile rocket batteries, the kind of systems built to fire, vanish, and reappear miles away, arrived in the northern Philippines. They were not aircraft carriers or carrier strike groups. They were launchers mounted on armored trucks and transportable by a single C-S-Well 130 flight. Yet in their arrival was a message: geography and mobility together now create a stinging deterrent across the first island chain. The system at the heart of this story is the high mobility Artilla rocket system, HIMARS, fitted with modern precision rockets. Its greatest danger is not the size of a single warhead, but a doctrine of employment: shoot, move, and remain unfound. When HIMARS fires the new precision strike rocket PRSM, the circle of urgency expands. Northern Luzon, sitting only a few hundred kilometers from Taiwan and the Taiwan Strait, becomes a launch pad. That range places not just the strait, but swathes of the adjacent South China Sea and coastal Fujian province inside a zone of vulnerability. Amphibious groupings, logistics task forces, even staging ports are suddenly no longer safe havens. They are potential targets for highly accurate, fast-slewing fires from sites that can be set up and broken down in hours. What gives the deployment its strategic punch is not only range, but dispersal. Tens of thousands of small islands, airstrips, and makeshift clearings across an archipelago become usable launch pads. A truck rolls out, a launcher fires minutes late, or it is airborne aboard a transport and gone. A classic example of agile combat employment. For regional capitals concerned about coercion or a sudden escalation, that uncertainty can be as effective a deterrent as a fleet. Washington's decision to place these capabilities forward, to exercise them with partners, to move them into allied territory, is being read as more than a training event. It is being read as a declaration of intent that the United States will position long-range precision fires where they can best complicate any adversary's operational calculus. Allied forces in the Philippines, as well as Taiwan and Japan, now know that their security posture can be reinforced not only by carrier groups far at sea or aircraft flying long sorties, but by mobile land-based systems that can saturate contested corridors with accuracy and speed. China, of course, has its own answers. Beijing's arsenal includes heavier truck and track-mounted multiple rocket launchers, such as the PHL-16, sometimes referenced under different design, and a growing inventory of medium and long-range ballistic and hypersonic missiles designed to put entire surface groups at risk and to challenge freedom of maneuver far from the Chinese coast. The DF-21D, the so-called carrier killer, aims to keep large American surface formations away from China's immediate approaches. The DF-17, a hypersonic capable system, and the DF-26, a long-range conventionally armed missile, are part of a layered strategy intended to raise the cost of intervention. There is an important operational contrast between the two approaches. China has invested heavily in powerful, longer-range, and often fixed or semi-fixed platforms that can deliver massive volumes of fire. Those systems pack a punch, but they can also be detected, targeted, and in a high-end conflict, degraded. The U.S. and its partners, by emphasizing mobility and the ability to disperse across allied territory, are seeking to turn that expensive static edge into a liability. Put simply, if the enemy's biggest strengths are large, fixed targets, then mobility, concealment, and the ability to shoot from unexpected places undercut those advantages. This dynamic plays out across multiple domains. On the surface, the U.S. 7th Fleet continues to operate in the Western Pacific with carrier strike groups, destroyer squadrons, and forward-deployed ships tracking developments and asserting navigational rights. Destroyers equipped with Aegis radars maintain minute-by-minute awareness of air and surface activities. Their vertical launch systems carry a range of missiles that both deter and respond. At the same time, U.S. and allied air forces are shifting to stealthier, more survivable platforms. Fifth-generation fighters now operate out of bases in Japan and elsewhere, providing a more resilient air picture and complicating any attempt at sudden escalation. Below the seas is another quieter form of superiority. Nuclear-powered attack submarines, Virginia and Los Angeles classes among them, patrolled the deep tracking movements, shadowing ballistic missile submarines, and holding high-value targets at risk with torpedoes and cruise missiles. Submerged forces are the ultimate stealth tool. Their presence imposes constant uncertainty on surface operations and on logistics chains that might otherwise be imagined as safe. These military measures are not simply about hardware, they are about alliances and posture. The Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement between the United States and the Philippines opened access to multiple agreed locations across the archipelago, sites that can host rotational forces, logistics hubs, and crucially, the mobile systems that need only a short runway or a cleared stretch of land. Exercises like Balikatan, held in the Philippines each year and dramatically scaled in recent editions, are as much political choreography as military rehearsal. This year's iteration drew participants from across the region and beyond, including, for the first time in decades, a significantly expanded contingent from Japan, with ground units and coastal anti-ship missiles deployed alongside Filipino and American forces. Those developments break old taboos and signal a deeper integration of regional defense capabilities. The presence of Allied ships near contested features can have an immediate, practical effect. Few incidents exemplified this more starkly than recurring standoffs around Second Thomas Shoal, where a rusting Philippine patrol ship, intentionally grounded decades ago, remains the scene of harassing maneuvers and pressure from maritime militia and Coast Guard vessels. In those tense hours, the appearance of a U.S. destroyer on the horizon can change behavior without a shot being fired. The mere presence of a capable, alert surface combatant with sensors to detect aircraft and missiles at long range and with strike options ready impose restraint and prevents escalatory acts from becoming a fait accompli diplomacy. Diplomacy runs alongside the deployments. Intelligence sharing, integrated radar networks, and joint training have tightened over the last several years. Navies and air forces are practicing interoperability on a scale that would have been unthinkable even a decade ago. The result is a multi-layered defensive architecture that blends sensors, shooters, and submarines into a more coherent deterrent, and that extends beyond bilateral relationships into multinational frameworks. Australia's move toward nuclear-powered submarines under a security partnership with the United States and the United Kingdom adds a new southern layer to the regional security map. South Korea's industrial base and expanding military modernization bring an additional dimension from the north. The cumulative effect is to make the notion of any quick, decisive coercion less credible. Still, escalation risks remain real. Beijing's anti-access and area denial investments were designed precisely to raise the bar so high that Western carriers and expeditionary forces would be deterred by the risk. Hypersonic missiles, more survivable ballistic systems, and increasingly capable long-range fires are all part of China's playbook. And yet the U.S. response has been to reframe the problem. Rather than accept a world in which a handful of expensive, vulnerable platforms determine access, Washington and its partners are dispersing lethality across geography and allies. That approach is an attempt to turn fixed strategic denial into a tactical problem for an adversary, to make every inch of geography potentially contested and every island a potential staging point for resilient fires. We must also acknowledge another, less visible calculation: economics and political cost, economics and political cost. Any large-scale kinetic operation in the Taiwan Strait or across the South China Sea would trigger massive economic destruction. The global economy, intricately tied to the flow of goods through these waters, would feel shockwaves. That calculus, the prospect of catastrophic cost and international isolation, is part of the deterrent mix. The coalition's message is not only military but economic and diplomatic. The cost of decisive aggression would be immense. That is not to say the future is settled. The next decade will see continued competition, new platforms, new doctrines, and new attempts to outmaneuver or out-invent an adversary. China will continue to modernize and depress maritime claims through gray zone measures, Coast Guard incursions, maritime militia deployments, and the gradual militarization of reclaimed features. The U.S. reclaimed features, the U.S. and its partners will continue to test the limits of mobility, precision, and integration. Each side will probe the other's tolerance and the seams of allied unity. For the people who live under this shadow, the shifts on maps translate into more immediate realities: expanded joint exercises, the arrival of new units and equipment, and increased patrols in waters once considered peripheral. For capitals like Manila, Tokyo, and Taipei, the message is tangible that they will not stand alone. For Beijing, the message is disquieting. The investments made to shape a strategic buffer are now being met with agile counters that diminish the value of fixed, high-cost platforms. Strategy, in other words, has become a contest of adaptability. If there is a single lesson in this unfolding chapter of Pacific security, it is that geography is enduring, but advantage is not. The side that best integrates mobility, survivability, and allied reach will shape the tempo of events. The side that bets solely on static fortification will find itself forced to respond to a dispersed, inventive opponent. The coming years will not produce tidy victories. They will produce a slower, attritional competition in which alliances, industrial resilience, and political cohesion matter as much as any single weapon. As the sun rises and sets over these contested seas, the new realities take hold not in dramatic exchanges, but in small strategic choices: where to place a launcher tonight, which port to supply, which radar to link, which country to reassure. Those choices will define the limits of coercion, the contours of deterrence, and the possibilities for peace. The story being written now is not about sudden conquest or simple domination. It is about the painstaking remaking of posture, an architecture of prevention shaped by movement, partnership, and the quiet geometry of islands and seas. In the years ahead, the challenge for policymakers will be to maintain that cohesion and to keep deterrence credible without slipping into permanent crisis. Military hardware will continue to evolve and doctrines will adapt, but the underlying aim will remain constant: to ensure that escalation is costly, coordination seamless, and the pathways to peaceful resolution remain open. In a theater where a single launch can change the math, that delicate balance between preparedness and restraint will determine whether this new era becomes one of secure stability or a prolonged, grinding standoff. Listen to the decisions made this year, and you hear not the last word, but the opening of a new chapter. One where mobility meets reach, where islands are lines of deterrence, and where alliances tested, deepened, and distributed will decide the margins of safety in one of the most consequential regions on Earth.